folks. Going from a different angle because my tripod is completely broken. Uh, I put it aside the other day and it fell over and it just broke. I'll show you what's going on. This is what I have it sit on every time, and you can see I tried to tape it and it's just loose. So I'm gonna have to buy a new one of those. But until then, try to enjoy me doing this whole collection video with just my hand holding the camera here. So I've been going through and just thinking about, okay, what can I talk about next in terms of collection videos? And so I thought nothing more than comic book movies. You know, films that are based on comic books. And not necessarily films that have gone into, not necessarily films that have been made then turned into comic books, like Star Wars. I'm not going to count, but I'm going to talk about, you know, the Marvel films, the DC films, some of the independent films that have been produced. Not independent films, but some of the independent comics. I'm sorry. Some of the independent comics that have been produced. So yeah, we'll dig right in here. Now this first one is the one that kind of kicked off the whole comic book movie craze in the 2000s. What am I talking about? X-Men. This, of course, edition is X-Men 1.5. I've never really felt the need to upgrade the X-Men movies onto Blu-ray. I probably should, but I've just been sad, especially with this edition, is you couldn't get any more deluxe than this edition right here, which came out in 2002, just before X-Men United was to hit theaters. So, X-Men 1 is the one that kind of set the bar on how these comic book movies are to be made. Brilliantly directed by Bryan Singer. You know, and it was kind of, I'd almost want to say, controversial at the time because of the casting choices. You know, because look, this had a major celebrity cast into it. You know, from James Marsden, Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Halle Berry, Rebecca Romijn. The only one who was unheard of at the time was Hugh Jackman, and I think what was kind of controversial about it is that they were imagining that Wolverine should be played by a big celebrity star at the time. Well, Hugh Jackman was a nobody. He came right from Australia. He was doing plays in Australia, and he was cast as Wolverine. Not only that, he doesn't really fit the physique of what would be Wolverine in the comic books. He's bigger and taller than what Wolverine is in the comic books. And this DVD edition really has a good series of documentaries and featurettes. Like, they show how the film premieres. And it was interesting to see that. Let me turn it back towards me. It was interesting to see that because you see Stan Lee talk about, at the time, this was 1999-2000 when X-Men came out. He's talking to a bunch of reporters, and he says, one of the reporters says, so this isn't just another special effects movie. And he says, oh, no, it's not. He goes on and says, no, it's not just another special effects movie. It's, your whole life's a special effect, is basically what he said. And It kind of reminded me at that time because Hollywood was kind of growing weary of big budget special effects blockbusters. Um, if you look at the films that came out at that time, you know, we had Titanic, we had Armageddon, we had all these huge movies that um, the you know it would just it seemed like there was no limit to what they were going to do, and audiences weren't really impressed. Well, this film, X-Men, really kind of shattered that a little bit, and so it kind of set the bar of what we go to the theater to see today. And another thing about this film, and of course the film series, is the politics side. It definitely takes a stance on tolerance and social issues of the day. Because when Stan Lee created X-Men, he created it to be a response to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Well, we're still dealing with racism, but not like what it was back in the 1960s. We have other issues, and so that's one of the things that Bryan Singer has adapted into the X-Men lore is today's current social issues. So we go from X-Men 1, and really good movie. I haven't watched it a long time, actually. So I may have to pop this in again and see it. So we go from X-Men 1. Gotta reach for the next DVD. X2 United, which continues the story. I mean, right after X-Men 1 ends, it picks right back up with Wolverine returning back to the school, and we're introduced to a new villain by the name of Stryker. And for once, the evil mutants have to collaborate with the good mutants because Stryker is out to kill all of them. And then, of course, there is a plot that changes the whole thing, and they start to go after the humans as well. But I'm not going to say what that is, because who knows? Maybe some of you haven't even seen it. And yeah, it's a good continuation. In some ways, I do think that this was better than this. It's just a lot of fun, and it's just an action-packed ride. Good story, good effects, just fun. As opposed to this. Yeah. It's not terrible, I will say that. But true comic book fans were particularly ticked off at the next I'm not going to say the next two movies, but a couple of movies in the X-Men film franchise. And starting with X3, The Last Stand. And mostly it had to do with Jean Grey as the Phoenix. Yeah, apparently I never was a reader of the X-Men comics, nor did I watch the Saturday morning cartoon. Even though that was of my generation, I never got into it. That's just who I am. I just never got into it. A lot of people complained over the Phoenix and how it was treated. I don't blame you, because it doesn't really make any sense to have her be just killing everything and going berserk. A good positive to the film, Kelsey Grammer as Beast. And he's freaking fighting as Beast. And yeah, he looked cool. Even he was in all that makeup, but he did an awesome job as Beast. And it goes into a little bit more, like, politics is all through this whole series. And it's almost kind of, how do I want to say it? It gets a little, yeah, whatever. I mean, Star Wars had politics in it, and it's just, I don't think that's what they were going for, but they were going for, like, the social issues, and definitely, because in The Last Stand, they actually introduced this. They have a character that can cure the mutants. It's one mutant that can do it. And he can cure the mutant race. Now, I'm going to be talking in this video about the whole X-Men film universe. So, I'm going to skip a couple movies, because next would be X-Men Origins Wolverine. I want to skip that till later on, because, yes, that is a part of X-Men, unfortunately, but it is not canon. It's just telling a backstory of Logan. So, we go on to, because of the failure of X-Men Origins Wolverine, they completely scrapped what was going to be X-Men Origins Magneto. They were going to do a sequel called X-Men Origins Magneto. But instead, Fox did the smart thing and decided to scrap the entire Origins telling what they were going to do. Instead, they were going to reboot it and tell how the X-Men got started, starting with X-Men First Class. And they got Bryan Singer back involved. And that's the thing, Last Stand did not have Bryan Singer involved. This was directed by Brett Ratner. Yeah, and he did a better job than what I think was expected of him, but it is not a good film, okay? But then we go to X-Men First Class. Bryan Singer was involved with this one, but he did not direct it. He only produced it. And this one was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who was coming off of the film Kick-Ass, and had some success with that. Now, this film tells how it all kind of started. With Xavier this time played by James McAvoy, and Michael Fassbender playing Magneto instead of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. You also have Jennifer Lawrence playing Mystique in this film. And you have January Jones. Let's see who else is in here. Kevin Bacon playing the main villain. The reason why Magneto is the way he is. And yeah. And then we go on from that to X-Men Days of Future Past, where Bryan Singer did return to direct, and this joins both parts of the franchise, the little bit of the old and the new, because you got Wolverine there, and then you got Patrick Stewart, and you got James McAvoy, both playing Xavier, and Michael Fassbender and Ian McKellen playing Magneto. And this one this one's had a little bit of trouble with it. Matter of fact, some fans were aware that it was supposed to have Rogue in it. And so there is another Blu-ray called the Rogue Cut, where it does feature Anna Paquin coming back as Rogue. And then finally, we have X-Men Apocalypse, which didn't do... I don't know how it fares with the fans, but in terms of the box office, didn't perform as well as the other two movies. And you have Oscar Isaac playing Apocalypse. You have several other characters. Some of the more modern characters come into play. But yeah, X-Men Apocalypse. Now that's pretty much the main canon of the X-Men universe and where that's gone. And as you can see, there's an old generation and there's a new generation, but it's kind of the same canon of stories. But now it's time to get into the expanded universe of X-Men. Matter of fact, when all these movies sit on my shelf together, except for two of them, because I just feel it's its own story, but it's a part of the X-Men universe. So I think it was important to, and you'll find out what that is. So let's go on to X-Men Origins Wolverine. Yeah, not that great of a movie. It does have some cool characters. Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth. I think he was good for it. You know, of course, Hugh Jackman's, Wolverine. And then you have, what's his name? Is it Taylor? What's his name? Yeah, Taylor Kitsch. That's who I was... Yeah, he's Taylor Kitsch as Gambit, which a lot of fans really praised. That he was really good. But then... Deadpool. They completely butchered Deadpool. Still Ryan Reynolds, but it is nowhere near what we will talk about a little bit later. And then we go from X-Men Origins Wolverine to the Whoops, I dropped it on the floor. Just the Wolverine. And a lot of people criticize this one that it wasn't what it could have been. Matter of fact, I can't remember. No, this is just the PG-13 version. Yeah, that's why they ended up releasing a unrated cut that was a bit more violent. This one was the PG-13 cut, or the theatrical cut. Again, a lot of people thought there could have been a little bit more, so they released an unrated cut, which had a bit more violence in it. And then we go to Logan. And this one is the end for Hugh Jackman, supposedly. Very gritty, very downbeat, rated R, and it just goes crazy. And a matter of fact, this Blu-ray edition has the standard theatrical version, and it also has this called Noir version, which is basically a black and white version, which adds to the mood. And very well done movie, and it takes the character Wolverine and Logan like we've never really seen before to its full potential. And it's directed by the same guy who did the Wolverine, and it's just really, really good film. Now, as I mentioned before, Deadpool. Why in X-Men Origins Wolverine did he have to be a mute? He's known as the Merc with the mouth. Luckily, Fox came to their senses and made this. This, of course, is the first Blu-ray edition of Deadpool, with Ryan Reynolds reprising his role. It will make you roll out of your seat laughing. Some people didn't care for it. I was rolling at some of the stuff that was in this. Yes. And a lot of people were making this a big deal that it was the first R-rated comic. You don't know much, do you? What about Blade? Just saying. And Ryan Reynolds was even in that, too. But anyway, I think it kind of showed that maybe audiences are ready for something a little bit more extreme with comic book characters. There was speculation, because this is a Marvel property, that Disney would make it. Well, Disney didn't, because Deadpool is a part of the X-Men universe. While 20th Century Fox, currently still owned by 20th Century Fox, owned the movie rights to all the X-Men universe. That is, until now, that Disney is purchasing Fox. But anyway, you got Deadpool. Makes him what he should be. And now we have the sequel, Deadpool 2. And this has two different cuts. It has an R-rated cut and the super duper fill in the blank cut. That's what I'm going to call it. And you have Josh Brolin playing Cable. It's, again, rollover funny. And just extreme and crazy. Now, of course, many of you know the tie-in is Wolverine to why this is in the X-Men universe. The tie-in is Wolverine, and also in both of these films, you have Colossus, and I can't think of the girl that does all the exploding power. That's in X-Men. They pop up in here. Definitely Colossus. And he's trying to make Deadpool a very nice guy, and it's just funny, and Deadpool doesn't want anything to do with it. But yeah, those are my X-Men collection. And now, I forgot to mention this, that these are the two that I set by themselves. Yeah, it's a part of the X-Men universe, but he's, how do I want to say it? He's not working with the X-Men. The X-Men are kind of working with him right now, and it's kind of his own story. But however, I know I'm hypocritical by putting a Wolverine in with them and Logan, but even though those are standalone movies, but I just feel, you know, he was a part of the X-Men and Deadpool's not. He is in that universe, but he's not a part of the group. So, yeah, there you go. Don't know what I'm on. I may be talking about the rest of the Marvel MCU next time. So, from me to you, see you later.